Hi, Jerry. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Jerry Cordaro. I'm a program manager at a nonprofit called Bright that works with energy companies and energy storage. I also have a bachelor's degree in physics and a master's in space studies. So I've been a space nerd for pretty much all my life. Um, I was actually a NASA contractor for a while, which was a very fun job, but unfortunately, contracts end.
So tell me more about the Masters in Space Studies.
Well, it's an interdisciplinary program, so it covered science, technology, law, human factors, a little bit of everything. My final project for the degree was the technical feasibility of a space elevator, which, if you don't know what that is, it's just what it sounds like. You get on the bottom, you go up, and you're in space. But instead of being built from the ground up, it's actually built from the middle out. You drop a cable essentially down to Earth and extend another one up to keep everything in balance, and then you just make the cable bigger and bigger and bigger so it can carry more and more weight. It's a really neat idea, fantastically difficult to do in practice, but excuse me, but if it could be built, it would change everything, honestly.
Yes, I think what Arthur C. Clarke wrote a book about it, like the Fountains of Paradise or
The
something
Fountains
like
of Paradise, yep.
that. So which university did you go to for the Masters in Space Studies?
At the University of North Dakota. It was an online program. I only had to physically be there twice. Once for the capstone presentation, which was moderately terrifying because we presented to someone who literally wrote the book on the subject. It was about planetary protection and diverting an asteroid. And one of the judges wrote a volume about this entire thing, and we were all like, "You want us to do what? Okay, sure." And the second time was for my graduation.
Do you remember what got you interested in space?
I'm about to date myself. Apollo 11 launched on my 5th birthday, and I thought that was just incredibly cool. I wanted to be an astronaut. It's actually why I went into physics in the first place. Yeah, obviously didn't happen, but I just think it's incredible that people can actually go up in space and live there and learn new stuff.
So I guess whenever you were 5, it's probably hard to remember what you felt seeing Neil and Buzz up on the moon, but do you have any memories?
Actually, I don't remember if I watched the landing. I do vaguely remember watching the launch, and as I said, it was my birthday.
Oh,
the launch. Then, so am I cutting out? Sorry.
Oh, it was going to mute and back. But so you're not sure you watched the landing, but you watched the launch, and it was your birthday.
Yes.
So
yes, and I wanted the cake more than I'm sorry, I wanted to watch the launch more than I wanted the cake. Which for a 5-year-old is pretty impressive.
Well, if you were 5 in 1969, that would have made you 8 by 1972.
Yep.
In 1972, when Apollo 17 took off, did you have any feeling that this would be the last mission?
No, I mean, I don't remember, but I don't think anybody thought it would be the last one. I think part of the problem was it had gotten to be routine. People like, oh, they're going back to the moon, okay. And and that actually brings me to another point. I was a NASA contractor at the time that Constellation was announced. When NASA's big tag for it was, we're going back to the moon, and I was like, no, because for most people alive today, going to the moon is something they hear about from their parents or their grandparents, or reading a history book or something. It's not inspirational. If they'd said, and this was actually the plan, to go to Mars, but go to the moon as part of that. If they'd said, we're going to Mars, and as part of that, we're building a base on the moon, that would have been completely different. It would have been inspirational. But saying, oh yeah, we did something we did 50 years ago, it didn't really, not much inspiration there.
Yeah, I've come across that a few times. Just this past week, I stopped some people in my neighborhood, like, hey, can I interview you for this project? It was probably a middle school kid and his mom. And I was like, did you know that we're going back to the moon? And he's like, no. I'm like, what do you think about it? He's like, haven't you already been there? And I think it's kind of a curious thing. I wonder how you would feel if you went to Disney World one time and the next time they're like, well, hadn't you already been there?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah,
So,
I understand that, but I mean, part of NASA's job has always been being inspirational. It's to get people excited, and there's kind of a cross current there, because NASA as an organization wants space to be boring, right? You don't want something unusual, unexpected to happen.
and they succeeded at it so well.
Yeah, and in most, and in a lot of ways they have, but you can't hold people's attention with something that's boring, right? So they have to do something that's big and inspirational, but safe enough that they can keep doing it. And those two things have been in tension for so long. I mean, the very first time NASA tried to launch a satellite, it blew up live on television, so they're okay, they're risk averse, and that's a good thing in one sense, but in another, it's not. You've got to find that spot between so dangerous that you can't do anything and so safe that nobody's interested.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, and I've been thinking about this a lot in this project, how to get people excited, how to get people engaged. And it's interesting about sports, right? I think one reason why people are so interested in sports is because they don't know the outcome. It could turn at any moment. And also the underdog can come out on top and things like that. And I think NASA's done a lot of good job with trying to engage people, send your name to Mars, send your name around the moon, help us name the rover. But all of that sort of, doesn't really get them deeply involved in the core of the mission, I suppose. It's more kind of tangential. But I was wondering if you had any ideas on, if you could sort of design the program differently to really, I mean, also another thing I hear whenever the Apollo 11 astronauts went around the world, they would go to places like India and Europe and Africa and other places, and people were really excited about them going to the moon, as in themselves. Like there was a sense that humanity had taken this big step, and that we were somehow doing it all together. And even today with like the billionaire space race and all the different bubbles that we have in terms of collections of people, it seems like it's really hard to do things that feel like it's all of us doing it. And I just wonder what
Yeah.
your thoughts were.
Um, well, I think that the first crew on Mars will probably have at least some of that feeling of, you know, we're all doing this together. Probably not as much as Apollo did, because people are focused a lot more on the cost of it and not the benefits. You know, not just the setting foot on the moon, but the technologies that had to be built to get us there, and the things we learned from being there. Um, just being able to get to Mars alone, that's going to be a huge technological leap. But if you don't get people to understand how that influences them directly, you know, one of NASA's big things is they have been trying for years to tell people how that the work that they do affects their lives. Excuse me, affects their lives, right? I live near the smallest NASA center, NASA Glenn in Cleveland, Ohio. It's where I used to work. Literally every commercial aircraft you've ever been on has something that came out of Glenn, but people don't know that. You know, it's not the kind of thing that people really understand. You think about NASA, you think about rockets and spaceships. Okay, you don't think about things like titanium hip implants or drugs for osteoporosis or things like that, all of which have come out of the space program. The MRI came out of a device to examine aerospace parts. So, you know, it's all this primary and secondary and even tertiary spinoff, but people just don't see. They don't get it. NASA is frankly doing a terrible job of explaining just how important it is and the work that it does. I think that's actually a government thing in general, really. We don't really talk about how much good the stuff that we've done has been for us. But getting back to the question that started me off on this long ramble, what would I do? I would honestly base it along the lines of the way Apollo was built up. You have the Gemini and Mercury and Gemini and Apollo, you know, building technologies and experience to go step by step by step. But still keep the focus on, yeah, okay, we're going to build a base on the moon. The reason we're building a base on the moon is so we can build a base on Mars. So we can, you know, we can learn to live on another planet. You've got to keep that bigger goal in mind, and not just on your mind, but everybody's mind when you're going forward. That was something that they did really well with Apollo. You know, it was always, okay, we're going to go over to space. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. The purpose of all of this is to get to the moon. We're going to learn a lot of stuff along the way. We need to learn a lot of stuff along the way because we can't just go right there and hope everything will be okay. The same thing with Mars. You can't just go, you know, send people there and be like, okay, let's hope this works. Yeah, it needs to be a long-term plan that is sold well enough to the public that they understand not just the obvious goal of getting people on Mars, but what we could learn along the way and how that will affect people on Earth. One of my professors, and this was back in like 2005, 2006, I don't remember if he did a study or if he quoted a study in one of our classes that showed that the economic effects of the Apollo program were still being felt in 2005 because of technologies that come out of it, that come out of that, and come out of that. You could trace that economic impact back to the Apollo program 40 years later. You can still do that now. I mean, you probably could. I don't think it'd be more diffuse. But again, NASA's not really good on selling themselves on that. And that I think is a shame. Because literally everything you do every day is affected in some way, shape, or form by technology that came out of NASA. Like the phone I'm using to talk to you on this, right? The GPS that's in there that came out of the space programming and Department of Defense. All these technologies that we take for granted or don't even think about, and you can tie them all back to this kind of work. And granted, I'm a bit of a fanatic. So maybe I give it a little more weight than it really deserves, but I don't think in general we give enough. And that's the frustrating part for me.
Now, you talked about Mars being a real inspiration, and I think you mentioned learning to live on another planet. When you look out in the future of humanity, do you see a human city on Mars?
I do. I don't think I'll live to see it. Hopefully my kids will live to see it. Possibly my grandchildren, assuming I have any. I sincerely hope so. I wish I could remember who said this. Earth is the cradle of humanity, but you can't stay in the cradle forever.
I think it was a Russian person, actually.
It might have been. I don't remember. I've seen it so many different times. Who actually said it first is just not in my head anymore.
Yeah, I've seen the quote. I like that quote a lot myself too. I guess, what do you think is going to happen in your children's or grandchildren's lifetime to make that happen that could not happen in your lifetime?
The technological and economic and what I'm trying to think of. We have to have the will to do it and the ability to build it. I mean, I think the will for it is there, but the people who have that will, and right now, people like Elon Musk, who just really aren't inspirational, they're more annoying. People need to want to do it and to have the ability and the infrastructure, that's what I'm trying to think of, the infrastructure to do so, right? Because it's going to be a massive project. Just building the first habitat on Mars is going to take years. Turning that into a city would be a work of decades. It's a matter of time, ability, and will. Let's put it that way.
Jerry, if I heard you right, I think I heard you say that Elon Musk is not inspirational, he's more annoying. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. I have a little different feelings, but I'm really interested in your point of view.
Well, the the thing is, what we're seeing now is a bunch of incredibly rich people showing off how incredibly rich they are, right? Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, look, I've built my own space company so I can go to space. Well, great. I mean, I know that's not what SpaceX is for. I really do. But when you've got someone like Musk saying, yeah, oh yeah, I want to go to Mars. Okay, that's great. And the other 7 billion people on Earth are going to do what? Right? It's not, I want to build something for people to move to Mars. It's, I want to go to Mars personally. It ends up being ego driven. And when you've got someone like that being so public about it, I think it actually hurts the cause of getting humanity off Earth, because it seems like some rich guy's fantasy instead of a common goal for humanity.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with the International Astronautical Congress, but it's the oldest space convention that's been happening every year for, I think, like close to 60 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2016, it was in Guadalajara. Elon was going to unveil his interplanetary transportation system, later the VFR, Starship, what have you. And
Yep.
I was like really thrilled about that. So I took my wife and my son and we went there, and we were able to, through some connections, actually, we were like 6 rows away from the stage. So it's kind of neat. But as far as that presentation, he was saying that in order to really build a civilization on Mars, you have to get the cost of going to Mars down to where like a median income household could liquidate all their assets on Earth and make that investment. Mm-hmm. And the price that he was saying that he really felt that you would need to get down to really make it possible for people to go would be $500,000. Of course, now after the last few months, that would be like $1 million. But anyway, 500,000 in 2016 dollars. Okay, but I was just wondering what you thought of that point of view, that in order to really open up the pathway for such a civilization to develop, really comes down to lowering those costs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and SpaceX, to their credit, has done a lot to lower the cost of getting stuff into space. It's okay. I don't think that he quite understands the idea of median income if he thinks a family of median income can come up with $500,000, but I think he thinks that, I mean, actually, I'm sure he believes that. It's how he's saying it to people who are not at the IAC, right? He comes across as being obnoxious and smug, and I think part of it is just his personality. I mean, he's a I know exactly what I'm doing all the time kind of guy. That's how he built SpaceX and Tesla and everything else. But he's not talking to a bunch of believers. He's not talking to his stockholders, right? He's he should be talking to the general public. And the first thing he has to do is convince them that I'm just not a rich guy looking to do rich guy things. That's where I think he's falling short. But like I said, I mean, SpaceX is wonderful. You know, they've done a lot to reducing the cost of getting into space, which is great. He's just not very good at talking to normal people.
I just drill down on that a little bit. If you were to advise them and say, hey, you know, you got the true believers, they're all excited, but you know, they only represent a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of people, and in order to achieve this, we need to hit some higher numbers. What would be your advice?
Same as it is for NASA, really explain it better. You know, explain why the person of median income should be interested in going to Mars. Literally, what's in it for them, right? And you can talk about oh, we've done this and we've done this and we've done this, which most people will not understand or not really care about, you know. Actually, here, let me give you an example. Starlink. When I first heard about that, my thought was, he wants to put thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit, and which is already cluttered, and to do what? Well, right now, one of the only ways that people in Ukraine have internet access is because of Starlink. Like, okay, I get that. You know, it is important to get people who otherwise could not get connected to the world connected to the world. That's good. That is really good. So if you're going to send people to Mars, why? You know, not in just it's going to be fantastic, it's going to be wonderfully cool, but why should I care that you're doing it, right? Like, what is it, a year or two back when you started talking about the first trips to Mars are going to be one way, and people were horrified, and I'm like, no, no. I mean, well, okay, exploration, probably not. Settlement, almost certainly will be one way. I mean, just look at the age of exploration, you know, here on Earth. People left their homes to sail across this vast space, this vast ocean. Most of them did not come back home. Well, not you tend to think it's because they died on the way. No, it's because they got where they were going and they built a life there. So when he was saying it would be a one-way trip, he could have phrased it better. The idea makes sense. The phrasing was not so good. And I think for that, especially, phrasing, communication really, really matters. You have to get people to get it at least enough to see it as more than a vanity project, right? Blue Origin. The very first thing that most people ever heard about that was Jeff Bezos taking a ride to a low Earth orbit, you know, or to the edge of space. That sounds like a vanity project. Okay, in many ways it is, but he's trying to build a business. Same with Virgin Galactic. It comes across as a vanity project. Now, in both cases, they're really not, but the first thing most people heard about them was billionaire owner goes to the edge of space. You know, and or they're trying to build a tourism program for obscenely rich people. And right?
But if the price was lower, or anybody could afford it, like $1,000 instead of 500,000 or whatever it is. Do you think that would have an effect on people's perception?
Actually, yes, it certainly would. And I know enough history to understand that when you have a new form of transportation, like take the airplane, when commercial aircraft first went into service, they were for the rich because people couldn't afford them. And that's because the planes were expensive. They didn't fly very many places. You know, it was a high-end thing. But over time, it's to the point where almost anybody can afford to take a flight somewhere if they want to. We're at the beginning stages of space tourism and space travel. In the next few decades, I fully expect the pricing and the costs to come down enough that might not be something you could do, you know, couple 4 or 5 times a year, but maybe once or twice in your lifetime. You know, it would be still be an event, but it'd be an event that normal people could afford and look forward to.
And do you think having a lottery would be a way to bridge the gap between what people could afford and being able to go, or the price would really need to come down to that level?
Um, a lottery would be a gimmick, I think. It would be great PR, don't get me wrong, but as a way to get a lot of people involved, it's a gimmick. Over the long term, the prices have to come down, and that's space travel in general, not, you know, right now. Well, okay, this is when I was in grad school, so it's like 15 years ago. The cost to lift a kilogram of anything to orbit was about $10,000. I know SpaceX has lowered that cost. I don't know how it's off the top of my head, but basically, to bring up a gallon of water was $10,000 and like $2.50. You know, to get that cost down it's actually vital, because otherwise only governments and rich people and corporations are going to be able to afford to move stuff into space. That's actually one reason why I became interested in the idea of a space elevator, because the cost of going to space drops from $10,000 a kilogram to however much it costs the energy to get the ascender up to where you want to go and open the door and kick it out, you know. So it's yeah, we need a better, cheaper way to do it that does not sacrifice safety, of course. Yeah, and that's probably as far as I can go with that.
If it was safe and affordable, would you take a trip to space?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How far would you go? Suborbital, orbit, to the moon? Would you immigrate to Mars?
Probably not Mars. I would love to visit the moon. Yeah. If I had the opportunity, I would definitely go to the moon. Mars, I'd be too worried about not coming back.
Now, let's imagine that one of your descendants actually does go and immigrate to Mars. and it's been several generations. And now your great, 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 great granddaughter has grown up on Mars her entire life. She's in high school. And just like high schoolers today might do a paper on like the 1920s, she's doing a paper on the 2020s. And is there anything about today's time that you think would be worthwhile to put in that paper?
Oh my goodness. The question would be what to leave out. If you're talking specifically about space, then yeah, it would be the growth of private space industry. Maybe even the beginning of asteroid mining. I mean, I know there's actually a company that's talking about doing that. They're planning out missions to go to an asteroid and start figuring out how to mine it. I'm fairly certain, though, that whatever she'd be writing about is something I haven't even thought of, because stuff is bound to happen, and it'll be surprising, and that's generally a good thing, you know. Just because I can't think of something at the moment doesn't mean that someone else isn't going to think of it, or that, you know, someone's going to do something and then someone else is going to build off that, which is generally how everything goes anyway, and come up with something that's entirely different. So I don't know. I just know I'd love to read that paper, honestly. Like, what happened? What did I miss?
How did it turn out?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's pretty awesome to think about such papers being written several hundred years, that we actually survived these times. I mean, because if you look at previous times in history, they were in many ways way more turbulent than anything we've ever experienced.
Yeah.
But we have the comfort of knowing how it turned out.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, I mean, and when we're in the, well, what the crap point at the moment, like, yeah, I mean, my parents grew up during World War II, and it was hard for them to explain to me how worried they were about how things were going to turn out, because I knew how it turned out. Well, you don't know how things are going to turn out when they're happening right then and there. So I get that a lot more than I used to.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry, I really appreciate your time and getting to discuss this with you. I know I asked you a lot of questions,
Sure.
but is there anything that you wanted to talk about, or did you have anything, any questions for me?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it, you know, in your blurb, but what got you interested in doing this project?
Yeah, so I think the combination of several things. Back in 2019, we had Artemis Day. We had a new associate administrator who was tasked with getting us, boots on the moon by 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a lapel pin with the number of days to the end of 2024. And he was going around NASA and highlighting the hero of the day that was helping get people to the moon. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be good to just ask everyday people? And at that time, I had been working from home for 2 years, which, is not funny anymore, right? Because everybody's been working from home for 2 years at this point. So, and I realized I was only seeing my family for weeks at a time. So one of my roles was going to be they would be all in-person interviews at Starbucks and the street and at the store, which worked out great until the COVID lockdowns. So, so I had to become a little bit more flexible then. But that's kind of the genesis of the project.
Cool. How many people have you interviewed?
Close to 823, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And wow, that what are you going to do with all these interviews?
I don't have any grand master plan. My plan right now is just to try to complete the project, which in my mind is continuing an interview a day to the end of 2024, and then probably put on the shelf for a few years and come back and revisit it. I think is sort of my thing. But I tend to think of my target audience as being people not even born yet. So I got some time.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Well, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for this, and good luck with it. Maybe we'll see it in the Smithsonian one day.
Maybe I have these dreams sometimes of Artemis 3, them taking a little microchip and placing it on the moon. but but anyway, well, Jerry, you have a good rest of your day.
You too, Nathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.